This conference will now
Good
be
morning, sir.
recorded.
Your voice is not audible, sir.
కొంచెం వాల్యూమ్ ఇంక్రీజ్ చేసుకోండి వెంకట్ ట్రై చేయండి ఓకే so first we'll see what are the differences between SSRS and Power BI Desktop. So both are used to develop reports for a client. Okay, SQL Server Reporting Services is a tool which we use for developing a page-oriented reports, and PowerBI Desktop is a tool which we use for developing reports, like visualized reports, right? So, what is the difference between these two, SSRS and PowerBI Desktop? So, we all know SSRS, right? So, let's see the complete flow of SSRS. So, we'll compare both in a design way. So, data is stored in SQL Server, in SQL Server table, and in Visual Studio. This is consider this is a Visual Studio, and to develop any report, like we have to follow three rules, right? Three steps. Creating a connection. So we created a connection to the database and server, and we imported data into SSRS by writing a data query in data set. Then we designed a report as per the client requirement. Then we deploy that report into our report server, and from report server, client will access. From a report server, client will access. This is a flow that we discussed, we worked on. This is a flow that we worked on a SSRS side. Now, so this is a Visual Studio. This is a Visual Studio. In a Visual Studio, we take a reporting services and we create a connection to the database, and we import the data, right? So over here, when we make a connection to the database, when we make a connection to the database, సో మిగతా వాళ్ళకి కూడా వాయిస్ అలాగే వస్తుందండి, కన్ఫర్మ్ చేయండి సార్, ఎవరైనా అన్మ్యూట్ చేసి.
క్లియర్ గానే ఉంది.
ఓకే ఫైన్. Okay, so in SSRS, we create a connection to the database and we import the data into a Visual Studio, right? But the data will not be saved anywhere in a SSRS. Okay, the data will not be saved in SSRS. It will be saved in a temporary buffer for time being. It will be stored in a temporary buffer for time being. So, but whenever you run a report, whenever we run any report in a Visual Studio, any SSRS report in Visual Studio, in a background, it will create a connection and it will import the data every time. Every time, if you are running SSRS report, it will go to a database. It will bring a complete data into Visual Studio, then it will present that information. It will execute the design, and then the report will be saved into cache again. That copy we call it as a cache report, right? So that's what we discussed. So nothing. So we are not storing the data which is coming from SQL into Visual Studio, but we are storing each and every tool has a in memory. In memory means temporary memory. So it will be stored in temporary memory, but it will not be stored permanently into Visual Studio. Okay. Now let's move to a Power BI case. In Power BI Desktop, client can store data in database. So a data repository, we call it a database or data repository, and client can provide Excel files. Client can provide CSV files to import the data into Power BI Desktop. Again, here consider this as a Power BI Desktop tool. This is a tool, Power BI Desktop tool, which we are going to use for developing our reports. Power BI Desktop tool, and similar process, over here also similar process. So we create a connection. So we have to follow three rules: creating a data source, data set, and design. Same rules we have to follow for all reporting tools. So we'll create a connection to the database from where we want to import the data. Then we'll import the table into a Power BI Desktop. But in Power BI Desktop, we have an option to store this table data permanently into a Power BI Desktop file. Power BI Desktop file. Okay. So in case if you want to store this data permanently into your Power BI Desktop file, then while creating connection, we have to choose a connectivity mode. So in Power BI, so in SSRS, we haven't seen any connectivity mode while creating a connection to the database, right? By default, it would be a direct query. Okay, by default, it will be direct query. Direct query means whenever we run a report in a Visual Studio, there would be a call to the SQL server and it will import the table data into a Visual Studio. Okay. So if you are running the same report again, if you are refreshing the same report again, so it will go to a SQL Server DB and it will import the data into Visual Studio. Okay. But in case of a Power BI, here we have a multiple connectivity modes. First connectivity mode is import. And second connectivity mode is direct query. And third connectivity mode is live connection. Okay, third connectivity mode is live connection. So there is one more available. It's a dual. Okay. So we have a three active connectivity modes available in Power BI Desktop. First one is the import, second one is the direct query, and the third one is the live connection. We also have a dual mode. Okay, so we will discuss all these four. So while creating a connection, we are going to develop a report in Power BI Desktop, and we are going to import the data. First, we require the data, right? So I'm making a connection to the database, but while making a connection to the database, you have to select uh, any one of these, like import or direct query or live connection or dual. Okay. So dual is not appear. It will not appear while creating a connection. We can change it to dual. So we will talk about later this one. Okay. So let's talk about import. So what happens when you select import connectivity method? When you select import connectivity method while creating a connection from Power BI Desktop to SQL Server, right? So if you are creating a connection if you are creating a connection by using import method, then it will copy the data. Complete data from SQL Server or wherever you are connecting. So it will copy the data from SQL Server and it will be stored into a Power BI file. It will be stored into a Power BI file permanently. So now, whenever you run a report after importing the data permanently, after importing data from SQL Server to Power BI Desktop, it will be saved into the Power BI file permanently. Then you can use this data which is stored in a Power BI Desktop file for your visualization, like a visualization pie chart and then table item, and you can design. Okay, you can start designing your own report. Now if you want to run this report, you when we click on a run, no, for the first time it will go to the when we are creating a connection, it will go to the database and it will import the data into a Power BI Desktop. But if you are running the same report after, if you are running the same report 100 times after importing the data, it will not go to a SQL server. It will not go to the SQL server. It will not import the data. So one time job. While creating a connection, if you select import method, it will copy the data from SQL Server database to Power BI file. It will be stored in a Power BI file permanently. Now ఈ పర్టికులర్ రిపోర్ట్ మీరు ఎన్నిసార్లు రన్ చేసినా ఈ ఆల్రెడీ స్టోర్ అయి ఉంటుంది డేటా పవర్ బిఐ ఫైల్లో సేమ్ డేటా విజువల్స్కి ఫీడ్ అవుతూ ఉంటుంది. సో మళ్ళీ డేటాబేస్కి వెళ్ళదు. ఓకే. బట్ ఇన్ కేస్ ఆఫ్ ఎస్ఎస్ఆర్ఎస్, if you are running SSRS report from Visual Studio by clicking on preview, every time it will execute the connection, it will import the data. Every time it will import the data into Visual Studio. But in case of a Power BI, we have a import connectivity method. If you are selecting import connectivity method while creating a connection and data set, it will import the data into Power BI Desktop. It will store the data into permanently into Power BI file. పర్మనెంట్ గా స్టోర్ చేసేస్తుంది. సో లేటర్ గా మీరు ఎంత డిజైన్ చేసిన ఎన్ని నెంబర్ ఆఫ్ టైమ్స్ ఈ రిపోర్ట్ రన్ చేసినా మరి డేటాబేస్కి వెళ్ళి మరి తీసుకురావాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు. ఇక్కడ డైరెక్ట్ గా ఈ డేటానే ఫీడ్ అవుతూ ఉంటుంది. ఓకే. నా ఇన్ కేస్ ఇఫ్ యూ సెలెక్టెడ్ డైరెక్ట్ query connectivity method, what happens? So we discussed over here, right? So we are creating a connection now in direct query, and the data from SQL Server will be imported into a Power BI file, and it will be stored in a temporary memory. It will be stored in temporary memory. It will not be stored permanently. So it will not be stored permanently. It will be stored as a temporary memory, like I said in SSRS. Now, when you run this report for next time, again there would be a connection to the database and it will import the data again. Okay, so if you are running the same report 100 times run చేస్తే ఏమవుతుంది, 100 times మళ్ళీ డేటాబేస్కి వెళ్ళి మళ్ళీ డేటా తీసుకొచ్చుకొని మళ్ళీ షో చేస్తూ ఉంటుంది. ఓకే, దట్ ఈస్ ద functionality of direct query. Any questions, any questions on this two, import and direct query? So which one do you prefer, import or direct query? So let's say I have a table. I have a table with one. I have a table with 1 lakh records. Which approach do you, which connectivity mode do you take? Okay, so we can take import connectivity method. Reason being, whenever we run a report in Visual Studio, no, every time it goes to call, it goes to database, it has to travel to database and it has to import the complete data into Visual Studio, right? But over here you can reduce that travel, right? You can reduce that number of times visiting a database. So if you are importing a data, it will be saved permanently your file, so that whenever you run a report, it will be quickly retrieved from in memory to the visualization. So quick గా చాలా క్విక్ గా ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ అవుతుంది. మళ్ళీ డేటాబేస్కి వెళ్ళి ఆన్ ప్రెమిసెస్ లో నుంచి మళ్ళీ ఫెచ్ చేసుకురావాలంటే it takes little time. So that is the reason we always prefer import method, but import method has a few constraints. So let's talk about a constraints in import method. So if you are importing data, so if you are importing data from SQL Server or some file to Power BI Desktop or Power BI service, right? So in case if you are importing data into Power BI Desktop, we have a constraint, the size of the file, which means the table size. In case if you are importing data from SQL Server table or from Excel file, no, the size of the data sheet should not exceed 1 GB in case if you are using a trailer version. Okay, so premium capacity unte it might extend to 2 GB, but 1 GB it should not be greater than 1 GB. The size of the table, the size of the table, the size of the table, in case if you are importing a table from SQL Server to Power BI Desktop in import method, it has some constraints. Constraint ఏంటంటే the size of the table should not exceed 1 GB. And in case if you are doing the same activity in Power BI service, there based on the license type premium capacity, it increases to 2 GB. Okay, fine. So each and every file size should not exceed 1 GB. So 1 GB కన్నా ఎక్కువ ఉంది అనుకోండి. So if you want to bring a table from SQL Server to Power BI Desktop, but the size of the table is a 2 GB అనుకోండి, or else let's consider it as a 3 GB, then we cannot go with the import connectivity method. Reason, it has a constraint, it cannot import a file if the size of the file is greater than 1 GB. Okay, for the advantage over here is Power BI Desktop has some compression algorithms in while designing the Power BI report. So in case if you are importing a data from SQL Server or some other file into Power BI Desktop, no, in import method, I'm talking about import method, then the compression algorithms which are available in Power BI Desktop, and it will, let's say if you are uploading 1 GB file, so 1.1 GB, let's say 1.1 GB file is available. The size of the table is 1.1 GB. As I mentioned, if the file size is greater than or equal to 1 GB, then we cannot import that file into Power BI Desktop, right? Then a client has a 1.1 GB, directly we can say we cannot import it, right? But over here we have a technique we have to follow. Even the size of the source file is 1.1 GB and it has a compression algorithm. Before importing the data, before saving the data into Power BI Desktop, it applies those compression algorithms on a source data. It applies compression algorithms on source data. It will try to compress the size of the data. Now, after compressing the data, then it should not exceed 1 GB. So before conversion, before compression, the size of the file is a 1.1 GB. After compression, the file size should be less than or equal to 1 GB. Then only we can store it into a Power BI desktop, right? సో ఫైనల్ పాయింట్ ఏంటంటే సోర్స్ ఫైల్ సైజు 1.2 GB కూడా ఉండొచ్చండి. బట్ మీరు ఆఫ్టర్ అప్లోడింగ్ మీకు పవర్ బిఐ ఫైల్లో స్టోర్ అవుతుంది కదా డేటా సెట్ ఫైల్, ఆ ఫైల్ సైజు 1 GB కన్నా ఎక్కువ ఉండకూడదు. బట్ ఇన్ బిట్వీన్ ఏమవుతుందంటే కంప్రెషన్ అల్గారిథమ్స్ ఉంటాయి. ఆ కంప్రెషన్ అల్గారిథమ్స్ ఏం చేస్తాయంటే సోర్స్ ఫైల్ సైజ్ని రెడ్యూస్ చేస్తాయి. ఓకేనా? ఎనీ క్వశ్చన్ సో ఫర్? అండ్ ఇంపోర్ట్ constraints, we are talking about constraint and import connectivity method. First constraint on size of the file. Okay, next let's move to direct query. So let's talk about direct query connectivity method. In direct query, we don't have a constraint on the size of the file. So the size of the file is 3 GB, that's fine. So 3 GB అయినా 4 GB అయినా 10 GB అయినా that's fine, no issues. But there is no constraint on a size of the file in case of a direct query. But the constraint issue ఏంటంటే every time client runs a Power BI report, it has to travel to database, and it has to fetch that information into Power BI. Every time a client runs a report, it has to travel to database and it has to import the data. So direct query, in case if you are dealing with a 3 GB or 4 GB data, right? So when you run a report, it takes little amount of time. So when we have a huge data, like 3 GB, 4 GB per data set, then we cannot go with the import connectivity method. Then we will go with the direct query method. Okay, but as I mentioned, if there is a 3 GB file size, which always takes a more time, right? 3 GB file ni ఎవ్రీ టైం క్లయింట్ రిపోర్ట్ రన్ చేసినప్పుడు డేటాబేస్కి వెళ్ళి 3 GB డేటాని ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకోవాలంటే టైం చాలా పడుతుంది కదా. ఆబ్వియస్గా మనకు అందరికి తెలుసు, ఇట్ టేక్స్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ టైమ్ టు ఇంపోర్ట్ 3 GB డేటా ఫ్రమ్ డేటాబేస్ టు పవర్ BI డెస్క్టాప్. దెన్ హౌ డు వీ ఓవర్కమ్ దిస్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ ఇష్యూస్ అంటే, దెన్ విల్ క్రియేట్ అ లైవ్ కనెక్షన్. సో లైవ్ కనెక్షన్ ఎప్పుడు వెళ్ళిపోతుందంటే, then the data of this table 3 GB size table data ni SSAS cube ga convert chestam. We have two different methods for creating SSAS cubes: tabular method, multidimensional model. So we will convert these tables into SSAS cubes, then we will import data from SSAS cubes via this connection. So we will talk about it later. So forget about this connection right now. So let's concentrate only on import and direct query. Any questions on import and direct query? Any questions on this is a one difference. So in case of SSRS, so there is no additional advantage that we get with the premium right now with the direct query. But import లో వచ్చేసి ఏంటంటే ప్రీమియం తో మనకి స్టోరేజ్ కెపాసిటీ పెరుగుతుంది. బట్ ఇక స్టోరేజ్ కెపాసిటీ లేదు కదా, there is no constraint and storage capacity for direct query. But license always matters. And okay, direct query లో ఏంటంటే ఇంకో ప్రాబ్లం, another problem with the direct query, if you are importing data, table data into a Power BI desktop in a direct query method, then the features available in Power BI desktop we cannot apply on a direct query data. That is one thing we have to remember. So in case if you are importing data in a direct query or live connection, you have to think twice. The reason being, the features available in Power BI desktop we cannot apply on a direct query data. Let's take one feature. There are time intelligence functions, right? We call them a date functions. There are few date functions which we cannot apply on direct query data. Okay, so there are few functions which we cannot apply in direct query data. But if you are importing data in an import connectivity method, then the features which we have in a Power BI desktop, every feature we can utilize it on a import data. Okay, the data which we imported into Power BI desktop. So any questions on import and direct query? It's very important. Very important. So I'm just repeating the same point. So in Power BI desktop, we have a features, right? Like in SSRS, like a drill down report, drill through report, writing expression. These are a features available in SSRS. Now, let's talk about features in Power BI as well. So we have a set of features in Power BI. Okay, in case if you are taking data from SQL Server DB to Power BI desktop in direct query connectivity method, then we cannot apply all the feature, we cannot utilize all the features of Power BI desktop on that particular data. We cannot apply the functions, let's say time intelligence functions, we cannot apply all the time intelligence functions, cannot be applied on a direct query data. In case if you are importing data in import connectivity method on that particular data, you can apply all the time intelligence functions. That is the one thing, right? That is the one difference. That is one another difference you have to keep in mind. Okay. Any questions so far? No. So we cannot develop another difference between SSRS and the Power BI desktop, right? So another difference is we cannot develop interactive reports. We cannot develop interactive reports in SSRS. We can develop interactive reports in a Power BI. So I'll show you interactive reports. We are going to develop interactive reports. This is one point. You can note it down for time being. Okay, I will explain in detail. So we cannot develop interactive reports in Power BI. Sorry, SSRS. We can develop interactive reports in a Power BI. That is the second point. Next point. Next difference, in SSRS we don't have a SSRS is not in-memory tool, and in SSRS it will not support Azure. It will not support a cloud feature slave. So we have a cloud features involved in a Power BI desktop. So Power BI desktop lo cloud features ఉన్నాయి. That is the third difference. Okay. So we will discuss more differences in this. So not now, it can confuse for sure. So we'll start working on a Power BI desktop reports, then we'll get into. So I'll show you how to find out the table size in SQL Server. Okay. So these are the basic differences that we talk about right now. So we will see more differences while developing a Power BI. You will know the more differences while developing a Power BI reports. Okay. Fine. Now, so we have to install a Power BI desktop to develop a Power BI reports. Then in today's session, I'll show you how to import data from database to Power BI desktop, how to import data from Excel. So we can import data from Excel. So again, just let me take another paint. So what we are going to discuss in. So from now onwards, like we are going to develop Power BI reports, Power BI desktop reports, PBI reports, Power BI desktop reports. So a Power BI desktop reports, the Power PBA, it has a lot of connectors in it. So how many connectors SSRS engine has? SSRS supports how many connectors? Do you remember number of connectors? Okay. So a PBA supports 100 plus sources, 100 plus sources. So we can import data from SQL Server, and we can import data from Excel file directly, and we can import data from CSV file directly. We can import data from PDF file. So a Power BI engine, a Power BI desktop supports lot of sources. Okay, of Power BI can easily connect to the SQL Server, and Power BI will read Excel file directly. Power BI will read CSV file directly, and Power BI can read a PDF file directly. So I will show you how to import, how to create a connection to the data source, and how to import the data into Power BI desktop. So we have to follow three steps, and data source, creating a connection, and data set, and then a design. So we have to follow these three steps in case of Power BI desktop as well. Okay, I'll show you how to create a connection and how to import the data into Power BI desktop in discussed connectivity modes like import and direct query. Then we'll see how to design a reports. Okay. So to find out the size of the table in SQL Server, right? In case if you want to find out the size of that SQL Server table. So in case if you don't remember any query, so I remember query. So I'm fine with query. Just go to properties, table properties like LNA. Somewhere you can see a size. So if it is not showing, then we'll take storage. The size of this table is data space. Okay, 0.016 KB. No, remember that. And there is one more. predefined procedure, space used, space used. This is a space used. So we can easily find out the space, how much space this table has occupied in a SQL Server DB by using this function, like by using this is a system procedure, sp underscore space used, and provide the name of the table to which you want to find out the size. Okay, fine. So first step, so let's create employee report. Let's create employee report in Power BI Desktop, employee report. So I have installed Power BI Desktop. Let's open it. Power BI Desktop. So if you are done with report server practice, right, you can just remove that in case if you have less memory like RAM and SSD. Okay, close it. So this is a tool where we are going to learn to developing Power BI reports. Okay, yes, no need to provide the information right now. Just close it. Okay. So as we discussed, we have to follow three steps, right? So first step is creating a connection to the data source. So we, from where we can import the data. Next, data set, and we'll write a query in case of a SQL server to import the data. Then design. These are the three steps we have to follow: data source and data set and design. So to import data into Power BI Desktop. So this is a tool we are going to see how to developing Power BI Desktop reports. Here we have a get data option. Here we have a get data option. Click on a get data. And in case if you want to, if you let's click on a more, go to more option, go to a more option. Okay, I have a point missed. Let's go back and just discuss that. So in case of import connectivity method, what we discussed in case of import connectivity method, it copies the data, table data from SQL Server to Power BI Desktop. It will store the data permanently into your in memory, right? Then do we have any constraints on number of columns or number of rows? Okay, so we haven't discussed that point, right? Yes, we are going to discuss that. How many columns it will store, how many columns it will store, and I haven't tested this. It's just that I have read the Microsoft articles. They have mentioned it's a 16,000 columns. 16,000 columns are allowed. Okay, so if in case if you are importing a table from SQL Server to Power BI Desktop, but Power BI Desktop maximum number of columns 16,000 columns మాత్రమే store చేయగలదు for one file. 16,000 columns considering everything. Okay, 16,000 columns, number of columns. Okay, number of columns in terms of number of columns. Next, in terms of rows, right? In terms of rows, we are talking about one file. We can import a number of files that we know, right? In SSRS we created multiple data sets. I'm talking about one data set at the moment. Okay, so in case if you are importing one table into a Power BI Desktop, how many rows, is there a limit in terms of rows in a import connectivity? I'm talking about import connectivity method. So in case if you are importing data from SQL Server to Power BI Desktop in an import connectivity method, is there any limit in terms of rows for a single file? Yes, there is a limit. 2 million records. It cannot import more than 2 million records into Power BI. 2 million records. Okay. So 2 million records is a max size number of rows. Just note it down. So recent interviews lo adugutunnaran. Okay. In import connectivity method, is there any limit for a rows? 2 million records. So we cannot import more than 2 million rows in a single data set. If you have a more than 2 millions, and if you still want to import, you can create another data set and import the rest of the rows. But in a single data set, in import connectivity method, you can import only 2 million rows into a Power BI Desktop, And what about direct query? What about, is there any limit for direct query? And is there any limit for direct query? It's a 1 billion records. So sorry, it's 2 billions. My mistake. In import connectivity method, it's a 2 billions, and in direct query, it is a 1 million. It's a 1 million. Just note it down, correct it. So in case in import connectivity method, if you are importing data from SQL Server or any file to the Power BI desktop, in terms of storage, in import connectivity method లో ఒక డేటా సెట్ లో maximum number of rows వచ్చి 2 billion records. 2 billion records, maximum number of records it accepts. And in case of a direct query, maximum number of rows వచ్చేసి 1 million, only 1 million. Columns same columns 16,000 columns, 16,000 columns. Each and every column కి ID ఉంటుంది, ID generate చేస్తుంది. So it will generate 16,000 columns. But in terms of rows, import connectivity method is a 2 billion rows at max for one data set. For direct query, it is a 1 million at max. You cannot accept more than 1 million. So what if you have a more than 1 million ante? సో 1 మిలియన్ కన్నా ఎక్కువ ఉన్నాయంటే ఏం చేయాలి? డేటాని స్ప్లిట్ చేసుకుని 2 డేటా సెట్స్గా కన్వర్ట్ చేసుకుని ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకోవాల్సి వస్తుంది. ఓకే, fine. That's a new point, and they have recently added in the articles. Okay, next. So we were talking about importing data, right? So we were talking about importing data into a Power BI desktop, then a design. So I'll just import the data into Power BI desktop, then I'll show you how to design it. Okay, to import a data into Power BI desktop, first option to remember is the get data option. So in case if you want to import anything, data from Excel file, so SSRS supports around 10 data sources. You remember Microsoft SQL Server, Azure, Teradata, and SSIS SQL Server Analysis Service. There are around 10 connectors we have in SSRS. It supports only 10 connectors. Can we import Excel file directly into SSRS? Do we have that connector, Excel connector? If you remember, so we spent almost 2 weeks on SSRS, right? Have you seen a connector which imports data from Excel file into SSRS directly? So there is no connector, right? But Power BI Desktop has 100 plus connectors. If I give you a PDF file, a Power BI Desktop can read a PDF file directly. If I give you a JSON file, if I give you some CSV or text file, a Power BI Desktop can easily read this file. So click on a Get Data option to import a data from various sources into Power BI Desktop. Various sources are MS SQL Server, Oracle Server, or PostgreSQL Server, SSS Cubes, or Excel, PDF. There are 100 plus of sources supported by Power BI Desktop. If you want to see the complete list from which we can import data into Power BI Desktop, just click on a more option, click on a get data option, then click on a more option, then it will show you complete list of connectors, right? So if you click on all, it will show you all connectors, right? Excel, we can import the data directly from Excel into Power BI Desktop. Then it is showing text or CSV. We can import data from text or CSV directly into Power BI, and XML, it reads XML file directly, JSON files, PDF files. And remember that we cannot read a PDF files in SQL Server. In a SQL, we can read a text or CSV file by using bulk insert, and by using open row set query, we can read Excel workbook, but we cannot read a PDF file in SQL, and we cannot read PDF in SSRS, SSIS, and SQL, but we can read a PDF file effectively over here. So, okay. Now, in case, so they have segregated all these other data sources for Power BI support. So that's the reason people are behind a Power BI desktop. It supports a lot of sources in it. So today, if it supports 100, next month they will keep on adding new sources. Okay. In case if you want to see segregated these sources into file, click on a file, and Power BI supports these file sources. It can import, it can read a Excel file, it can read text or CSV file, XML file, JSON file, and files from folder, and PDF file, and the other files from a SharePoint folder. Okay. So right now I will show you how to import a data from Excel file or CSV file into a Power BI desktop. Okay. Let's start with the files. Okay. So I have taken two files. This is one CSV file. The first one is a CSV file. The second one is a Excel file. Let me open this Excel file. So I want to import this data, strategy description, maturity date, and currency and market value into Power BI Desktop. I would like to import this sheet 2 into Power BI Desktop. Okay, let's go to Power BI Desktop. Let's travel to the Power BI Desktop and click on File. Here you just click on Excel. So I'll show you from the first to import data from Excel. First, click on a Get Data option. Go to More option. Okay, then click on a file option. Here you just select the Excel workbook and click on a connect option. Now you will have to browse a file, which file you want to import into Power BI Desktop. Select this and click on open. Now it is importing, like it is reading Excel file. It will store that file into a Power BI Desktop. So now you didn't ask a connectivity method, you remember? So we have discussed that while creating connection, we have to select any one of these, right? So in case of files, Excel file, CSV, JSON, PDF files, there is only one connectivity method is available, which is a import. That is the reason we didn't get that option at all. So for files, if you are importing data from files, by default it is a import means it will copy the complete data from Excel file into Power BI Desktop. There is no direct query option is enabled for files. Okay, select a sheet 2 now, which I want to import into Power BI Desktop. So these are the columns I want to import, and click on a load option. Click on load option. Now we are loading a sheet 2 into a Power BI Desktop. So here data source and data set, they have provided in a single screen SSRS. We created a connection separately and we have written a query to import the data from SQL Server to SSRS separately, right? But in Power BI Desktop, we don't have two different screens. We have a single screen. Click on a Get Data option and go to More option, and so when you click on a more and you just select Excel, right? So it creates a connection, it imports the data. So both the data set and the data source both are given in a same screen. Okay, fine. So after importing the data, you can see under a field section. So you can see under a field section here, a field section. You can see a field section. So under a field section, you can see data. So we have imported 4 columns, right? Currency, market value, maturity date, and strategy description. So now we successfully imported a data from Excel file into Power BI Desktop, right? So this is a table name. Sheet 2 is a table name. Double click, and if you want to rename it, it has a strategy, like trade blotter. Okay, trade blotter. If you want to rename it, so you can rename it. To just rename, double click on this data set. We call it as a data set, and trade blotter is a data set. Now clear. So these are of fields. Currency is a one field, nothing but a column. Market value is another field, nothing but a column. Maturity date field, strategy description field. So now in front of the field, column name, if you don't see anything, not calendar, not sigma, if you don't see anything, which means it is a string column. String column. If you see a sigma a symbol in front of the column name, which means it is a numerical column. Okay, which means it is a numerical column. If you see a date symbol, if you see calendar symbol over here, if you see calendar symbol in front of the field, then which means it is a date time field, date time column. Clear? So after importing data from a source into Power BI Desktop, now we'll have to verify the data type of each and every column. That is the first step. So currency is a string. Fine, leave it. It's fine. Market value is a numerical column, which is replicated as it is. Sigma on the market value is fine. Next maturity date is a calendar, so which means a date column. Strategy description is string column. There is no symbol in front of the column name. Clear? Now. So as I mentioned, and if you are importing the data from any file, Excel file, CSV, text file, no, then I mentioned that the data is stored permanently into our Power BI Desktop file, right? Here we have a 3 grid options. see, look at these three grid options. So first one is a design and data model, a data grid and model options. Okay, this is a very important option. Just select first one. If in case if you want to design your report, these are the report items available. These are the visual. We call them a visuals. And in a SSRS, we used to call them a report items, right? We were calling report items in SSRS, but over here we call them as a visuals. So we call them as a visuals. In SSRS, we call them as a report items. Now, in case if you want to design a report, just take anything, double click, you will get it in a window. And now, in case if this is a visual, if you want to feed data, so we have imported data into tradeboard dataset. In case if you want to feed the data currency wise market value, select currency and select a market value. That's it. Okay. Then it will show currency wise market value. Currency wise market value. That is done. Simple and currency wise market value. So this is how we will take another visual. If you want to take another visual like a pie chart, take a pie chart. And if you want to show strategy description wise market value, select these two columns. It is a very design is very easy and comparatively SSRS the పోల్చుకున్న design చాలా ఈజీగా ఉంటుంది. Okay, fine. So this is how we develop our report. So we import data first by clicking on a get data option, and we have to be very sure where our source data is stored. Is it in Excel file? The source data is it available in Excel? Is it available in MS SQL server? Is it available somewhere else? Okay. So first where the data is available. Okay. Right now I imported data from Excel workbook, right? So click on a more option, and then over here we have a files tab. We clicked on a files. So let's wait for it. So click on a files. So I selected Excel workbook and I clicked on a connect option. Now we can browse the file which you want to import, right? The simple steps of importing data into Power BI Desktop. Post that these are the visuals we have in a Power BI Desktop, and in case if as per the client requirement, if he is requesting us to show the business information on this particular visual, let's take this clustered column chart. If in case if he wants to see the data in this cluster, no, so space లేదు కదండి, multiple visuals కావాలంటే we can take another page by clicking on a plus symbol. We can take another page, and over here we can put a visualizations. Okay, fine. So now let's currency wise market value. Okay, so based on the client requirement, so based on the client requirement, this is in a previous section. There is so design preview comes in a same screen. Design preview comes in a same screen, and so that's how they designed it. There is no design and preview separately like SSRS. Okay, so these are the visuals available by default. But in case if you, like I mentioned, Power BI supports lot of visuals. Power BI supports, so there are two types of visuals: predefined visual, default visuals, and the customized visuals. These are the default visuals that we get when we install a Power BI desktop. And in case if you want to use a customized visuals, which means like if you are a user of Android mobile, if in case if you want to use application which is available in Play Store, we'll log into the Play Store and we'll look for an app and we'll download the app and we'll use it, right? In a similar way, if you want to use a customized visual, if you want to use a customized visual and which is not available over here, and click on the three dots and you can import a visual from a store. So over here we don't have a Play Store, here we have a Microsoft Store. Click on a get more visuals option, click on a get more visual option, but it requires a account, and it requires a account, so we will have to enter account details over here. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. I will enter my credentials. Okay, just a second. నాకు మీ మీద నమ్మకం లేదండి, మీరు యూట్యూబ్లో చేసినట్టు చేస్తారు అందుకని. ఓకే, okay, next we have to enter. So username. Now it will show. So you need to have an account, and this is a Microsoft store. This is a Microsoft store where you can see all your customized visuals. So by default, you will get only these visuals which you see on the right side. These are the visual. We will discuss, and we will discuss all these visuals in future sessions. So apart from these visuals, we can also import a visuals from a Microsoft store and we can use them. We can import, for example, let's say if you want to import this visual, if you want to import this visual, select this visual, and just in case if you want to use this visual, we can import it. Okay, we can import, add, click on add. So that will be imported into your file. So we can go to Microsoft Store and we can import a customized visuals for our reporting, like Android OS lagan. So మీకు ఏ యాప్స్ కావాలన్నా ప్లే స్టోర్లోకి వెళ్ళి డౌన్లోడ్ చేసుకుని ఇన్స్టాల్ చేసుకుని యూస్ చేస్తారు, సిమిలర్ వే. ఓకే, based on license type and then development. So Power Apps, they use a Power App. Some of the companies, they use a Power Apps to develop visuals. They don't give it for free, you know. That depends completely on licensing side. Okay. So this is how we import a customized visuals. Here customized visuals. See, here we have a customized visual. Okay. So if you want to use a visual which is not available in the list, and if it is available in the Microsoft Store, and click on three dots and get that visual, and we can use it for visualization purpose. Okay. So any question so far? And three simple things we did: imported data from Excel workbook, Excel file, and then we fed the data into visuals. Then we discussed how to import visuals from a Microsoft Store. Any questions so far? Okay. Next, so let's talk about only connectivity modes today. Uh, so Gmail is not allowed. Gmail is not allowed. Okay. So let's talk about only connectivity methods in today's session. In next session, we will start designing our reports. Okay. So I have showed you importing data from Excel workbook, right? Let's import data from CSV now. So get data, click on a get data and click on a more option. Then click on a file option. Now this time I want to import data from CSV file into PowerBI Desktop. Click on a text as CSV option and click on a connect option. And this is a CSV file which I am looking forward to import it. Okay, this is a CSV file which I want to import. Select the CSV file and click on open. So this is a new screen where we will have to fill some options. So data type detection based on first 20 rows, based on entire data set, do not detect the data types. So you just go with a based on first 200 rows. And reason being, what this screen does, it will scan each and every column values. It will scan each and every column values, rank first 200 values చెక్ చేస్తుంది. అన్ని న్యూమరికల్ వాల్యూస్ కాబట్టి మన పవర్ బి ఇంజిన్ ఏం చేస్తుందంటే it will give a numerical data type to the rank. Next, region. So we all know that uh, each column in Excel file. So if you go to Excel file, so Excel also has a data types in it. So Excel, what is the data type for this column is a Unicode string. Unicode string is the data type for us. Here we have a string data type is Unicode string, and this is a date Unicode string, and this is a double precision. So wherever you store data, for the data we will have a data types. మీరు డేటాని ఎక్కడ స్టోర్ చేసిన డేటా టైప్స్ ఉంటాయి కాబట్టి మీకు విజిబుల్ ఉండదు, మీకు అవేర్నెస్ ఉండదు అంతే. ఓకేనా? సో వేర్ we store data, each and every column has its own data types, but our data types hide అయ్యి ఉంటాయి. In case if you want to know the data types of this one, select this. So here you can see a data types. These are the data types available in Excel. So Excel also has a data types. Okay. Now, but in case if you're storing data in a CSV and text file, each and every column data type is a string. By default, string ఏ ఉంటుంది. Numerical values ఉన్న string data type. date values na string data type and string values na string data type. So each and every column in a CSV or text file is a string data type, but Excel has a various data types. Now as we are importing data from CSV, now we have to find out the data type of each and every column. By default అన్నిటికి string ఇస్తే మనకు వర్కౌట్ కాదు కదా. సో అందుకని ఏం చేశారంటే లిటిల్ డిజైన్ చేంజ్ చేశారు. సో బేస్డ్ ఆన్ ఫస్ట్ 200 rows, which means it will read first 200 values of each and every column, first 200 values of rank column, or sorry, first 200 values of a region column. After reading the values, then it will decide a data type. Okay, అలా ఫస్ట్ 200 values కాకుండా ఎంటైర్ డేటా సెట్ రీచ్ చేయండి. బేస్డ్ ఆన్ ఎంటైర్ డేటా సెట్ ఇచ్చామనుకోండి, అప్పుడు ఏం చేస్తుందంటే it will read all the values under rank column. It will read all the values under rank column, then it will decide a data type. Okay, so for example rank column లో మొత్తం కంప్లీట్ గా రీడ్ చేస్తున్నప్పుడు ఎక్కడైనా ఒక స్ట్రింగ్ వచ్చింది అనుకోండి, ఆల్ఫాబెట్ వచ్చింది అనుకోండి, అట్లీస్ట్ ఇఫ్ ఇట్ ఫైన్స్ సింగిల్ ఆల్ఫాబెట్ దెన్ స్ట్రింగ్ గా డిసైడ్ చేసేస్తుంది. ఆల్ఫాబెట్ లేకుండా అన్ని న్యూమరికల్ వాల్యూస్ ఉంటే న్యూమరికల్ డేటా టైప్ గా డిసైడ్ చేస్తుంది. ఓకే ఫైన్, నౌ క్లిక్ ఆన్ లోడ్. So this is how we can import data from CSV file into a Power BI desktop. Power BI desktop. Okay. Any questions so far on importing CSV file? It's a simple steps and just click on a get data option and go to more options. So in more kelesi more and take just option. Okay. So more option kelli ఇక్కడ ఫైల్స్ క్లిక్ చేసి దాన్ని ఇక్కడ సెలెక్ట్ చేసుకోవాలి. ఐ హ్యావ్ టు ట్రావెల్ ఇంత ఫార్ ట్రావెల్ చేయాలి. ఇస్ దర్ ఎనీ షార్ట్ కట్ అంటే వీ హ్యావ్ అ షార్ట్ కట్. సో వీ ఆల్ రిక్వైర్ షార్ట్ కట్స్ అని. క్లిక్ ఆన్ అ గెట్ డేటా ఆప్షన్. హియర్ ఆల్సో వీ హ్యావ్ అ షార్ట్ కట్ ఎక్సెల్ వర్క్ బుక్ and here we have a text and CSV. These are the shortcuts. Again same option. So you can Excel work చేసే same option వస్తుంది అంతేనా. సో travel, if you like traveling then click on a get data, go to more option, then click on a file option, then click on a file option, file tab. If you like traveling, click on a file, then select the option and connect it. So if you don't like traveling, then use a shortcut. Click on a get data and Excel workbook. And get data click చేయడం కూడా చాలా కష్టం అండి. గెట్ డేటాకి వెళ్ళి మళ్ళీ ఎక్స్ వర్క్ అంటే ఇట్ ఈస్ టేకింగ్ టైమ్. ఇస్ దర్ ఎనీ అదర్ షార్ట్ కట్? మళ్ళీ షార్ట్ కట్ అంటే ఇక్కడ ఈ ట్యాబ్స్ ఉన్నాయి. సో ఈ ఎక్సెల్ వర్క్ బుక్ పని చేసిన సేమ్ షార్ట్ కట్. ఓకే, సో విల్ నో దిస్ థింగ్స్ అండి ఇన్ లేటర్ సెషన్స్. ఓకే, నౌ so we have seen how to import data from CSV to Power BI desktop and Excel to Power BI desktop, right? And so in case if you want to design, this is the first tab, design tab, report tab where we do a report design, and second is a data. Click on data. So in case after importing data into Power BI desktop, in case if you want to view the data which you imported into Power BI desktop, మీ Power BI desktop లోకి ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసిన డేటాని వ్యూ చేయాలంటే then go to a data grid option. Over here the data which you imported into Power BI desktop is visible over here. Okay, and in case if you want to see trade border data, click on this data set and you can see over here. Okay, so by using get data option we will import data from sources to Power BI desktop. But after importing data into Power BI desktop, in case if you want to view the data, then we'll click on a data grid option. This is where you can view the data. But డేటా గ్రిడ్ ఆప్షన్ ఏం చేస్తుందంటే పవర్ బిఐ ఫైల్లో స్టోర్ అయ్యేంత మాత్రమే షో చేస్తుంది. ఇఫ్ ద డేటా ఈజ్ స్టోర్డ్ పర్మనెంట్లీ ఇన్ టు యువర్ పవర్ బిఐ ఫైల్, then only it will show that information over here. In case if you are importing data in a direct query method, so what we discussed in direct query, data will not be stored in Power BI file. That in case of a direct query method, data will not be saved into a Power BI file though. So here this particular option data grid option, which shows only data which is imported in import connectivity method. Okay, if the data is visible, in a data grid option, which means it is imported in a import connectivity method. So you just come to the data grid option, and if you click on any data set, if it is showing the data over here, which means it is imported in import connectivity method. That's how we can easily find it out. Okay, next can you show me importing in a direct query, right? So I got your question. Direct query lo kuda import cheddam SQL server nunchi, then we'll see whether the data will be shown over here or not. Okay, click on a design, a report, and click on a get data option. Now this time I want to import data from SQL server, right? Click on a more. I love traveling. I'll click on a more. So I will select a SQL server database, click on database, and we from which database I want to import it. I want to import data from SQL Server database. Click on SQL Server database and click on a connect option. Okay, click on a connect option. Now, so this is where we create a connection to the SQL Server and we import the data and we write a data query over here. Okay, so what is our SQL Server name? So how do we find a SQL Server name? Select @ server name. Take this. Paste it. Okay, so right now we will discuss in detail, about the screen, don't worry. So right now I just provided only SQL server name, and here you can see data connectivity mode, which means if you see, while importing data from any source into Power BI Desktop, if you see a data connectivity mode option is enabled, which means it supports these two. So see, MS SQL Server supports two connectivity methods. One is import and direct query. So we haven't seen this particular option in case of Excel import, right? Which means there are no two options. So we don't have a multiple options for Excel. There is only one option is available for Excel files. All files is only import. So by default import ఉంటుంది వాటికి. So direct query option వాటికి enable లేదు కాబట్టి, so we will not see this option at all. If you are able to see this option for any source, which means the source supports these two connectivity methods. Now MS SQL supports import and direct query. Now I'm interested in importing data. I'm interested in fetching data in a direct query method, connectivity method. Click on this and click OK. I just provided only SQL server name and then direct connectivity method. Connect, use my current credential. Now it will show list of databases available in my SQL Server desktop 387 KGV. మనం credentials ఇకుండా ఎందుకు కనెక్ట్ అయిందంటే విండోస్ authentication తీసుకుంది. Okay, now it will show list of databases available under my SQL Server. I am interested in importing some data from Power BI database, expand it, and broker. This is a table which I want to fetch from SQL Server to over here. The connectivity mode which we selected is direct query, right? So direct query is selected and click on a load. Now we are just taking data from SQL Server to Power BI Desktop in a direct connectivity method. So now we imported successfully. This is a broker data set, broker table. This is a broker table. This is a region and trade border, right? Now go to data grid option, click on a data grid option, and now we are able to see a data from trade blotter data set, which means it is an imported in import connectivity method, and it is a visible import connectivity method. And if you click on this broker, it is not showing. The reason, this table uses direct query and cannot be shown, which means if you are creating a connection, if you are importing, if you are fetching data in a direct query connectivity method, the data will not be saved into a Power BI Desktop. What it really saves? This is another important question. As you mentioned, it will not save anything into a Power BI Desktop. Are you sure? Yes, it will not save the data, but it will save only column names and the corresponding data types. Only metadata మాత్రమే స్టోర్ చేస్తుంది, డేటా మాత్రం స్టోర్ చేయదు. ఓకే, సో ఇంపోర్ట్ కనెక్టివిటీ మెథడ్ ఏమవుతుంది, కంప్లీట్ టేబుల్ విల్ బి స్టోర్డ్ సేవ్డ్ ఇంటూ పవర్ బిఐ డెస్క్టాప్. దట్స్ why we are able to see the data in a data grid option, and we are unable to see the data of a broker data set. Reason being, it which is imported in a direct query connectivity method, and in direct query connectivity method it only copies column headers, column header names and associated data types into Power BI Desktop, not the data. Okay, any question? That's all for today's session. So whatever reports you have developed in SSRS, no, you export, render them. Yes, give me a second, and then I'll come back to you for question. Okay, so far whatever reports you have developed in SSRS, no, render them in a CSV, which means save them in a CSV, save them in Excel, save them in PDF format. Okay, then use those files to import those files into Power BI Desktop. Import those files into Power BI Desktop through the Get Data option, and try to import data from SQL Server as well. So click on a SQL Server, and we have a lot of tables in SQL Server, right? Import all the tables in SQL Server into a Power BI Desktop. So activity for the next session is import some tables from SQL Server to a Power BI Desktop. That is first activity that you have to do. The second activity, whatever reports we have developed so far in SSRS, or render them into Excel or CSV format, then use them and use them for importing them into a Power BI Desktop. Okay. Any questions now? I'll take up a questions.
సార్ ఎస్క్యూఎల్ సర్వర్లో మనము డైరెక్ట్ క్వరీ తీసుకున్నాం కదా, మనం ఇంపోర్ట్ క్వరీ ఎప్పుడు తీసుకుంటాము, డైరెక్ట్ క్వరీ ఎప్పుడు తీసుకుంటాం?
ఇంపోర్ట్ క్వరీ ఎప్పుడు తీసుకుంటాం, డైరెక్ట్ క్వరీ ఎప్పుడు తీసుకుంటాం? ఎక్సెల్ ఇన్ కేస్
SQL సర్వర్.
let me stop recording.